The Final Four of the college football playoff is set. 4 teams, none of them had a bye. It's crazy. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some OU portal stuff. We're going to make some picks. We may even throw a special guest in there. We'll see you guys on the midweek. You've heard us talk about him several times. We refer to him as Chief, which he hates. But we're going to bring Chief in. Chief is a big Notre Dame fan. He's going to talk semifinals with us. Yes, I know. He's got all his Notre Dame gear on today just for fun. I got my new OU swag on, so we're all right. But we're going to talk a little bit about the semifinals. Chief's going to join us for that. We have no Anthony this week. Hey, first off, if you're listening out there, if you're watching, wherever you're at, we thank you guys. Give a like, give a subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out a lot. If you're not watching, you can find us on YouTube, MidWeek College Football Breakdown. If you're just listening to a podcast, you can find us anywhere you can find your podcasts. So we're glad to have you guys here with us, and we appreciate it. Chief, thanks for joining us this week, man.
Hey, thank you all for having me here to this event. It's an awesome time. Finally glad to be a part of this amazing opportunity.
All right, well, let's just dive right in. We're not talking about your game first, Chief. I'm going to make you wait. We're going to start by talking about some Ohio State, Texas. Both teams had to play in the first round. Neither got a bye. One, I feel like, had an easier path than the other did. But Dalton, first off, what is your thoughts about these two teams actually being here and the teams that they knocked out?
I mean, I think that all of us are going to agree the resume for Ohio State is so much stronger than the resume for Texas, and not even just in the past couple of games, but throughout the entire season. Yes, Ohio State has some games on their schedule where they played 4-win teams, 5-win teams, 6-win teams, and so forth. But they also had already lost once to this Oregon team, right? They had to beat Penn State, who was also a playoff team this year. Whereas Texas gets Clemson, who was a pretty weak ACC team, who got lucky to get into the playoff itself. And then Texas gets to play the Big 12 champ, who 3 weeks ago before the playoff, didn't even think there was a shot at getting into the playoff. So, I mean, the resume speaks for itself, and Will Howard is absolutely balling. I mean, to lose to Oregon by 1 point in the fashion they did in the regular season, to bounce back, weren't they up 28-0?
Yes.
28-0. Just played absolute dominant football. The defense is playing well. Ryan Day is coaching great football right now. But Will Howard, 17 for 26, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers.
How many of those fans you think still want Ryan Day fired because of the Michigan loss?
Man, I was going to ask you that. Like, do they still want to fire him? Like, they're in the hot seat regardless, no matter what, in this playoff, in my opinion. I don't think that there's a team that's playing up to the level that they're playing at. They may have had a hiccup against Oregon in the very beginning, but you got to be playing your best ball come January, and that's what they're doing.
Chief, what do you think about Texas's path to the playoffs? You think they got the princess treatment or what?
The only other team that had a better opportunity and a better path, or an easier path to get to where they are in this point, was Penn State.
I agree with that.
So Penn State kind of had a gift all the way through, but Texas again had an easier path as well, because they had a couple cupcake kind of. If it was reseeded differently, then Texas probably wouldn't have had the easier teams that they had.
Yeah, I agree. I will say I thoroughly enjoyed the second half of that Texas-Arizona State game.
Oh,
absolutely.
Seeing the Cam Scatabo awesome. Half was unbelievable. And I'm kind of with Nick Saban right now. He says Scatabo's his favorite player in college football to watch. I'm kind of with Nick Saban right now. Cam Scatabo is balling out, or was balling out, I guess. He is awesome. He's going to make some money on Sundays, that's for sure. His sheer toughness and ability to break tackles is going to make him plenty of money in the NFL.
The fact that he was able to rush for 143 yards, throw a touchdown pass, like a 40, was it 40 something yarder? 42
yeah, I was going to say 43. Yeah.
And then have 99 receiving yards. I mean, he did everything for Arizona State. Like, you look over at the sideline, he's just tired as heck, but he did everything.
Well, and I'm not convinced that he didn't have a concussion after that helmet-to-helmet hit in the first half from the safety Taffy, the one that also should have had the targeting penalty at the end of regulation. The same guy, but I'm pretty sure he had a concussion after that. He was throwing up on the sideline, and you just looked at him in his face, and he just kind of looked not all there. Mm-hmm. Even the wife a couple times was like, "Man, he looks like hell." Yeah. Like, and I'm not convinced he didn't have a concussion, but you weren't dragging him out of that game.
No,
he'd have beat you down. You tried to take him off that field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was an incredible performance.
I agree. Dalton, what do you see as the big key in this game for Ohio State and Texas?
Texas has got to find a run game. They rushed for 45 total yards. Like, if they can't run the ball, they're not beating Ohio State. You got away with it against Arizona State. But you couldn't run the ball against Georgia, and you lost to them twice. If you can't find a way to get a run game going against Ohio State, you're not winning. And the way they're playing, I'm not convinced they will be able to get a run game going. I don't care if Quinn Ewers throws for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards. If you can't run the ball, you're not going to win, because what we learned about Texas is Texas cannot finish a game. Texas was in the driver's seat. Texas had a chance to put Arizona State away. But the physicality in the trenches just really got to Texas. It wore their defense down. It gave them opportunities to get back into it. And then when Texas tried to establish a run to use some clock in the second half, they weren't able to do it. So I think that's the big thing. If they can establish a run, I think they probably have a chance against Ohio State. But I'm not convinced they'll be able to, because Georgia shut it down. Arizona State shut it down. Ohio State's ready to shut it down.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the stats, and Texas runs for 165 yards a game, 165 and a half. And Ohio State runs for only 169 yards a game. So these two teams, neither one of them have big running games and have not been crazy successful, which is crazy to me, because Ohio State has the running backs to do it with Travion Henderson. What's the other one's name? Dang, I don't have it. They have the 1-2 punch like Texas does with Bond and Wisner.
Judkins.
Yeah, Quinshon Judkins. Yeah, both of those dudes are averaging, 80 yards rushing a game, right around there. And that is their entire rushing offense between those two dudes. Will Howard basically picks up the rest of it. If they can't, I mean, I've said it 100 times, whichever team rushes the ball the best is going to win, especially when it comes down to a game like this. But
if this doesn't tell you how inflated Texas rushing stats are, because when you said 160, I had to go double check that, because Georgia held them to 29 and 31, and then they were held, I said 47, it was 53 is what they finished with against Arizona State. So for them to be rushing for 165 yards per game, such an inflated number, because when they play good defenses, they can't run the ball.
That's right. Chief, what do you think Ohio State's key to winning this game is on defensive side of the ball?
Ohio State's key to defense is just shutting down Texas to run and keeping and just blitzing Ewers, because if they pressure Ewers, Arizona State showed that if you pressure Ewers is like a deer in the headlights and looks like Happy Feet Jay Cutler, just running around and can't throw the ball anywhere, can't run.
Yeah, that's been a key all year this year to teams that played Texas. All their close games, they have not had great rushing, and they've gotten pressure on Quinn Ewers. Like, I wish Arizona State in the first half of that game would have just kept blitzing Quinn Ewers over and over and over. Make him beat you, because their running game was going nowhere. The defensive line was holding them to almost nothing, as Dalton said, 50-something yards for the whole game. You can get some pressure on Quinn Ewers. We've seen him make mistakes, and in their losses to Georgia, we saw him make mistakes. Shoot, in their first 2 possessions against Oklahoma, we saw him make mistakes because Oklahoma really put pressure on him in the pocket. He's not great when the pocket starts to collapse if he doesn't have just a wide open hole he can run through. It's going to be a fun game. That one is Friday night, right? That one is Friday night. Notre Dame, Penn State play Thursday night. All right, I'm just going to start with this. Chief, give us your thoughts on the Notre Dame, Penn State game.
Hey, Notre Dame, Penn State, this game is just going to be a backyard brawl. Nothing but 2 hard-nosed defenses that have nothing but respect for each other. This game is going to be won and lost in the trenches on the defensive and offensive line. Whoever can get pressure to the opposing quarterback and stop the run is going to win the game the most. But this game, no matter what, comes down to those big boys in the middle and how they're going to fight it and slug it out all day long. You know, Notre Dame's defense and Penn State's defense, I mean, overall standing, these are the 2 top defenses in all of NCAA football. I mean, Notre Dame is number 7, Penn State is number 5. But then again, you know, Notre Dame's scoring defense is also a key as well, because Notre Dame is number 2 scoring defense, and they're able to have the turnovers and get those plays. Notre Dame has had a turnover percentage battle plus every game this season. The only team in NCAA football to ever do that for every game in a season.
Yeah, Notre Dame is 1.3 plus 1.3 on their turnover margin per game.
Yes.
The Penn State is 0.7, so they're about half of that. Ohio State and Texas, I didn't mention this, but they're all 0.4. So, but they're all in the plus, so they're not in the minus at least. They're all in the plus, but Notre Dame does have the best turnover margin in college football right now.
And the other thing, too, it comes down to, even though people don't like to say it, but, you know, you never know what referee crew you're going to get. And the referee crew for this game is exactly the same referee crew that Notre Dame had against Georgia. So Notre Dame does know that even though they had the most penalties they had all season against Georgia, they do know how that this officiating crew will throw the flags and call the penalties in this game.
Y'all get screwed having the Big 12 officials for 2 games in a row.
The same exact crew, too, which baffles me. I've never seen that before, ever in college football. Back-to-back games and the same crew 2 games in a row.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty crazy because Big 12 officials, in my opinion, are the worst among the Power 4 schools. Dalton, what are your keys to this game for both teams?
I think for Notre Dame, I think Riley Leonard's got to be better. I don't think he can get away with throwing only 90 yards, and they only threw it 24 times against Georgia. And I know that was an interesting game, and they really tried to establish the run game. But the thing is, yes, I understand it was 23-10 ball game, but Georgia had a lot of self-inflicted issues in that game against Notre Dame. You can't fumble the ball on the 10-yard line when the backup quarterback got you all the way down the field, right? Like that's not – Notre Dame could not stop Georgia on a few of these drives, and then you have self-inflicted errors on Georgia. I've said it all year long. Notre Dame couldn't beat NIU at home. They shouldn't be here. It bothers me that Notre Dame is – Riley Leonard is an average quarterback.
He is.
He's an average quarterback.
He's an average quarterback.
If Penn State is this hard-nosed defense that we're talking about, which I think they are, they're very physical. We talked about this going into this Boise State game. Everybody's talking about Ashton GT. I gave Boise State's offense too much credit. I thought they could cover 13 points. No, because Penn State's going to play a physical brand of football. I think they're going to get after Leonard. I think that's going to be the difference in the game. Leonard has to be better than 90 yards passing. He's probably going to have to throw for a couple touchdowns because Penn State's going to be physical in the trenches. They're not going to let you rush for, you rushed for 154 yards against Georgia and your passing game wasn't working. You do that against Penn State, who has an offense that can put up 35 points a game. That's going to be a problem. Like, it's going to be really hard to win that game.
Notre Dame has the 101 ranked passing yardage offense in the country, only averaging 189.1. Here's where I think the big difference comes in this game is Penn State only gives up 101 yards, 100.9 yards on the ground, and Notre Dame averages 217.5 yards per game on the ground.
Yep.
Granted, Notre Dame did not play in a Power 5 conference. I know they played, Chief's going to say it, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I know they played 6 or 7 top 25 ranked teams, but none of them are to the caliber of this Penn State team on the defensive front and their front seven. Penn State's front seven
Georgia?
is good. That Georgia's been good in the past, really good on the defense. They're not as good this year as they have been the past 2 or 3 years in their front seven. They lost a couple to transfer portal and they lost a couple to the NFL. Penn State's going to put 6 guys from this front seven in the NFL. And so that's, to me, going to be the difference. If Notre Dame can run the ball like they've been running the ball all year, I think Notre Dame has a really good chance. Notre Dame also has a glaring weakness on their passing yardage offense. Their passing yards, 189.1. Like, if you have to run the ball 2/3 of the time to win, and you're running the ball against a team that barely gives up 100 yards a game, you may struggle in this game. That being said, something to me is just feeling like this Notre Dame is destined to make it to the national championship game. I don't know. I don't know that that's what I'm going to pick. I haven't decided, honestly, on that game at all. I have my other game decided. But I haven't decided on my pick on that game at all. The difference to me is going to come is that Notre Dame has to be successful in running the ball, or they're going to have serious problems. And if they're not successful running the ball and they have to rely on Riley Leonard and the 189 yards passing that they average, they're going to be in big trouble.
I just think that when you look back at that Georgia game, not only did Trevor Etienne fumble the ball at the 10-yard line when they were on the run. I mean, Notre Dame was on their heels, could not figure out how to get the drive stopped. He fumbles the ball. One of the weirdest fumbles. I don't know if y'all remember that. The fumble bounces like straight forward. I'm not sure I've ever seen that happen. That was so wild. Nobody even knew it was fumbled. They didn't see the ball until like the ball bounced 3 or 4 times on the ground. But then Dylan Bell had 2 of the worst drops I've probably ever seen in college football. It was funny. My dad actually texted me and said, Georgia may have more drops in this game than Oklahoma had all season long, which is saying something. Because they were dropping. Dylan Bell may score a 65-yard touchdown if he catches the ball. He was wide open. So I think that Georgia's defense actually played well enough to win this game. Offense couldn't capitalize in different areas. So I think that Penn State probably has the edge in this one. I think they may rush for 150 yards or so, but Riley Leonard is not going to be able to get away with playing average in a game like this because he's going to have to score points. I think Penn State will find ways to finish drives and put points on the board where Georgia could.
Notre Dame's favored by 1.5. I don't know what the odds makers know that we don't, but Notre Dame is favored by 1.5. Ohio State, on the other hand, is favored by 5.5, which that one I think opened at 6.5, which I thought was crazy. Opening at 6.5, it has gone down some.
I think it goes up. I think Ohio State wins by a lot more.
Yeah, I don't know if the spread's going to go up though. I think the game may go up.
Ohio State wins by more.
It wouldn't surprise me if Ohio State or if the spread came down to 3.5 or 4 by game time. It's crazy, and I know they base a lot of that off of who's betting what and whatever. But when it was at 6.5, everybody seemed to be betting on Texas, which I thought was crazy. Guys, Thursday night and Friday night, we got two, what I consider going to be two really good games coming on. I'm excited for it. It's kind of weird that it's going to be during the week and not on the weekend. Thursday night, we're supposed to get snow here. So, Dalton, you're probably getting snow Thursday night too up in Manhattan.
It's actually not hitting us.
It's not?
Which is good.
I hope it doesn't hit us either because we're crazy busy at work and I got to be at work on Friday. I don't have to drive in it. But this is uncharted territory because we hadn't been in a big playoff like this. We're finally down to the Final Four, which is what we normally see. It's just the 4-team playoff. It's going to be interesting. You'll get my picks here in a minute. Steven, I'm assuming you're taking Ohio State minus the 5.5 and Notre Dame.
Oh yeah,
minus
definitely.
the 1.5.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I know we'll be talking during that game. We'll be texting back and forth, I'm sure, a lot. I really appreciate you joining us.
Hey, Dalton, I do have one quick thing. Yes, Notre Dame did lose to Northern Illinois. It was Riley Leonard's second game in Notre Dame's schedule with a limited spring practice. But look what Riley Leonard did, 12 wins in a row.
I don't
12
care.
wins in a row, and no quarterback has done that.
At home. He had a bunch of college football under his belt. He played at Duke. He beat Clemson at Duke. You can't tell me.
Totally different system than what he's used to. Different offensive coordinator, different coach.
At home. They paid Northern Illinois like $500,000 just to lose.
Oh no, it was even more than that. It was 1.8. They paid 1.8 to lose. It was horrible.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, I do recall some texts from you after that game, Steven, and you were ready to throw Riley Leonard in the Grand Canyon after that game.
Oh, I was. He looked like a deer in the headlights. He looked like he had no idea what was going on. And then Northern Illinois found that one little key, blitz him as much as you can, because he was running around like a deer in the headlights. And again, his whole big thing was he couldn't pass the ball. Like you said, Dalton, Riley Leonard needs to pass the ball. He needs to use his big number 88 tight end to get him out of those sticky situations and make sure that he gets the ball downfield. Otherwise, he's going to take those sacks or throw the ball away, and Notre Dame's going to be 3 and out a lot of times.
Hey, let me ask you guys a couple of questions. This doesn't particularly pertain to either one of these games, but as big-time college football fans, we begged for the 12-team playoff for a long time. We begged for a bigger playoff than a 14 playoff, not necessarily 12. I think 8 probably would have been sufficient for me, but we got 12. So we have 12 teams at the end of the regular season that have a chance to to win the national championship. Seeing that there have been no teams that got the byes that have won a game in the college football playoff in this season with this format, Dalton, there's got to be changes made, right? What would you think, in your opinion, are the changes that should be made in the formatting of the 12-team bracket?
I think 2 things. For one, let's stop guaranteeing conference winners a bye. There are seed them 1 through 12, and if you're gonna have a bye, right? I think at this point I'd be fine with no bye, but if you're gonna have a bye, then the best 4 teams in the playoff deserve the bye, regardless. A 2-loss team who won a very weak conference and had no business being. They just didn't play the strength of schedule that some other teams played. I'm not really sure you deserve to bye. That said, yes, you did give us an awesome game against Texas. Appreciate you. Wish you'd have won it. The other thing, I am not going to defend, or I should say, I'm not going to defend Oregon in this because you weren't prepared to play football against Ohio State. That was awful. I don't want to defend them. However, teams do not need 26 and 27 days of rest before playing a football game. You go the entire season with a max of 14 when you have a bye week. But I do feel for Oregon and Georgia in the sense that you had to sit for 25 and 26 days.
It was that long. God.
Mm-hmm. Georgia did not play a football game for 26 days.
It's too long.
That's
crazy.
ridiculous to me. Like, you play your conference championship game, you win it, and then, hey, we're going to reward you. You get to play, a playoff game, yeah, sure, against a team that we've said is top 5 all year long in your first game, and you're going to have to wait 26 days to do it. Meanwhile, they're going to get to play a tune-up game and have a chance to play it at home. So I'm almost also, if you get a bye, I also think I'd like to see, forget playing these neutral site games. Like, if you get a bye, you deserve to host a game.
Yeah. The only way to not do a bye is to either take it down to 8 or take it up to 16.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's going to have to be a team with a bye.
I do. I felt bad for both of those teams who had to wait so long to play. I mean, Oregon was the number 1 team all year, and football is a lot about a rhythm. And then again, they did not play good football, but you go week in and week out doing this thing, and then you've got to rematch a team who you beat by 1 point. We expected a dogfight, but Ohio State goes and just absolutely trounces Tennessee. Now, if you're Oregon, you're thinking, oh crap. Not only did they just play, but they beat a high-power SEC team, and they did it in really easy fashion. They're going to be feeling really good and ready for this game. Meanwhile, we've been sitting. We haven't been doing anything. Yeah, you get to practice and all those things, but I hate that. I hate that part of the format. No, I'm not saying get rid of the playoff and don't lessen it at this point. I don't want to see 8 teams now that we've got 12. But they've got to make adjustments from this. Was it perfect this year? Absolutely not. Please make the adjustments you need to make.
So, Steven, you get 12 teams in, right? Or 12 teams get in. What's your thought on what 12 teams get in? Are conference champions, even weaker conference champions, guaranteed a spot, maybe not just a bye? Or what 12 teams get in? Do you just take the AP poll at the end of the year and the top 12 get in? How do you do that?
You would probably just do what they did for this previous one. It's the CFP, the committee, and the committee studies all year long after a certain period of time, and they're ranking these teams 1 through 25. And then what they do is, they take into consideration these conference championships. Conference championships, maybe an automatic bid into the top 12, but not an automatic first round bye like they did. And then what you do is then after that, then you rack and stack them. And not, conference championships don't get an automatic bye, but then you go off of the ranking, and, the conference championships don't have to move up and push other teams around. You just go 1 through 12, and then you go from there.
So if we take this year as an example, Clemson won, obviously, the ACC, winning that game at the end of the season. But they were ranked 13th at the end of the year. Why do they deserve it over somebody else that was ranked 12? Do you not just take the top 12? You guarantee a conference champion a spot, but if they're outside the top 12, then they have to be the last seed? How do you do that?
The CFP set up their rules to where conference championship weight matters amongst the Power 5, and then those non-Power 5 conference schools they pretty much have to go undefeated in order to make the top 12. So that's where that difference happened, to why that 13 seed moved up to number 12 to make it into the playoffs.
But Boise or SMU, neither one went undefeated. But Boise ended up getting a bye.
They were in a Power 5 conference, and they were ranked top all year.
Boise's not in a Power 5 conference.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Boise's not in a Power 5. That's what I'm saying. Like, to me, that has to be weighted a little more than Boise winning the conference championship. Because if Boise goes and plays, Lighthouse for the Blind and Sisters of the Poor from West Texas, and they win those games, and they win those games by big fashion, the eye test means nothing. No. Because that eye test is very skewed. The fact that Boise got a bye and the fact that Arizona State got a bye, I think means there has to be something changed this year or this next year in the formula and the method by which they do it. I think we're going to end up seeing conference champions get an automatic bid. right? But I think they're going to put everybody in a pool at the end. 12 teams they think should be there, or we'll say the 8 teams they think should be there, and the 4 Power 5 conference champions. And only if you're an undefeated group of 5 are you allowed in. Because, I mean, if you remember a couple years ago, Cincinnati made the playoffs when Ritter was their quarterback, made the 14 playoff, and were just made to look stupid in the game. So I knew if we stayed with a 14 playoff that a group of 5 was never getting back in, because Cincinnati wasn't in the Big 12 at that point, so they weren't in a Power 5. I think now they're going to say that group of 5s are only in if they're like undefeated conference champs, and they're not guaranteed a bid in. That would be my preference, because they're not. But we can take an undefeated, Boise State undefeated all year. We can take a Boise and put them up against an SMU or a Clemson or somebody like that, and that's probably going to be a pretty decent game. But you put a Boise up against a Penn State or Oregon or an Ohio State or a Texas, and they're going to get trounced every time, because they just don't have the Bulls and they don't have the talent that these other big-time programs have, and so it's a waste of a space. You telling me that Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, none of those teams would have beat Boise? South Carolina? I think all of those teams probably beat Boise just as bad as Penn State did.
Arizona State too.
I think the group of 5 is really going to have to step up their game to get in from here on out, in my opinion. All right, guys. Chief, thank you for joining us. This was a blast. I hope you enjoyed yourself. We're going to move on. We're going to talk a little bit of
Go Irish.
Go Irish. I was waiting on that.
Irish 23-17.
23-17. All right. 6-point win. So they're covering their spread. So, all right. We'll see, Stephen. We're gonna talk about this in our chat as the game's going on. I'm gonna remember you said Irish by 6.
All right. Thank you all very much.
All right.
Appreciate you, Chief, man. It's good talking.
Have a good one, Chief.
Thanks.
We'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
All right, Dalton. Let's get down to some OU stuff here.
Do it.
So, the portal's been a pretty happening place the last couple of days for OU. Got a couple of what I consider very nice, big-time signees from the portal, and Kendall Daniels, safety from Oklahoma State, who is a 4-star coming out of high school, and Marvin Jones Jr., who came out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Initially went to Georgia, transferred to Florida State. Now he's with OU. He was a 5-star coming out. And I'm feeling pretty good on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know what you think, but I'll give you my opinion. I'm feeling pretty good on the defensive side of the ball. Even without a defensive coordinator, since Zach Alley left and went to West Virginia, making a completely not even lateral move, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But that surprised me, honestly, because he was Brent's guy. But
I have an opinion on that, but
it comes out that Brent basically is not letting him do what he told him he was going to do.
Well, I don't know how we can say job wise it's not a lateral move, but if he's being told here is the defense, like it's yours, you actually get to be the D coordinator, then to me it's like, all right, now in my opinion you have an argument to say for yourself that it's not a lateral move. Like, especially all you've got to do is get a good enough defense. You can lose 2 games and still make the playoff. And if the committee keeps it up, West Virginia is going to find themselves with a stinking bye if they win the Big 12 with 2 losses. So it's tough for me to sit here and hate on the guy when, our defense got better. But I think that I think we've got a head coach that is a little bit too involved at times. And Zach Alley, I think, decided he was going to go a different route.
I agree. Him and Zach Alley were apparently close when Zach came here. And from the sounds of it, they've been butting heads for a decent chunk of the season from what we're talking about on radio here. Zach felt like he was very micromanaged and was not given, like I said, wasn't given what he was told he was going to be getting when he came here, because he was told he was going to be the defensive coordinator and Brent was going to oversee it, which I don't feel like was ever Brent's plan for any defensive coordinator that he's hired.
I feel like we hired Ted Roof in the first place. Like, to me, that was a no-brainer. Like, oh, that makes sense, because Brent just wants to do whatever he wants to do. Yeah,
it's a figurehead. So have you heard anything about, I mean, I've heard some stuff, but have you heard anything about defensive coordinator stuff? What are your thoughts there?
I've heard Clemson guy.
Yeah, Gibson or whatever his name was.
I don't know.
He's fired. He got fired because their defense was not good this year. And we saw that in the Texas game, and they just got trounced on the ground. Went from a top 10 rushing defense to somewhere like in the 50s, I think. Like, it was not good. And so, honestly, I don't really feel like it matters who gets hired, because I think Brent is still calling the defensive plays.
I think so too. And talent-wise, defensive-wise, even this year, under Brent or Zach Alley, whoever, Brent, the defense did get better from Ted Roof to now. But while we're on this topic, regardless of how good our defense is, if our head coach is too involved, once again, that just raises concerns, because we've seen struggles with clock management. We've seen struggles with trying to manage personnel and deal with things that you might need to let your coordinator handle during a game, because there are other things that you've got to be focused on as the head coach. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think some of it Brent's still trying to learn. I mean, he's a young head coach in the sense of this is going to be year 4, and he took over a program with a lot of expectations. I mean, he feels
a program that was in shambles.
Yep, a program in shambles with still the expectations that you win. Like, we can say it all we want. Like, we understand why we didn't win year 1 and year 2. Like, there's all these excuses, but I still think he feels that pressure of it's the University of Oklahoma.
It is.
And the thing is he expresses that because he feels that. I think that we all know this. We all agree this. He feels that pride for the University of Oklahoma. He truly wants to be the head coach that gets this program back to winning championships, competing for championships. I think that another issue with him right now at head coach is he's got to be willing to hop on board with NIL.
Big time.
I mean, we've made some progress. Like you said, the defense, I'm feeling pretty good about our defense. Even without a defensive coordinator, we're signing some dudes in the portal because they want to play under Brent Venables' defense. I mean, and look what our defense has done. Our defense found ways to keep us in games that we probably had no business being in this year.
No doubt.
Our offense was brutal this year. But so that's why defensive guys want to come play. We're excited about what we got in the portal. But that's another issue that I'm just nervous about moving forward. Can he hop on board with the times of NIL?
Have we met the needs that we needed to meet in the portal, in your opinion? I know there's still the late portal that is right after spring ball.
You've said it the whole time. Like, I don't have expectations next year. Yes, we've met the needs as far as positions go, but we're not signing dudes that I think we expected to sign out of the portal. I mean, a big position spot for me was tight end. We got 2 tight ends, and yeah, go ahead.
I did hear something about that today. There's a lot of scuttlebutt going around here in the city that Ivan Carrion may be getting moved to tight end. Really? He's one of those.
He's huge.
Yeah, I mean, he came up really big in the Navy game for us several times, but he's one of those players that is like in between positions body-wise. He's not fast enough to really be an outside receiver. Mm-hmm. He's definitely not fast enough to be a slot receiver, but he's not fast enough to be an outside receiver. He has the body for it, but he's a little bit bigger. The question then lies in moving him to tight end is if he can block a defensive end, even a little chip block to slow him down, or a linebacker or a cornerback blitzing off the edge, then becomes the question. But don't be surprised to see Ivan Carry-On getting snaps at tight end if the tight ends that we picked up don't end up panning out. I expect to see him no matter, but I don't hate it either. I mean, he's got good hands. We've seen him be successful. He's a big enough body where on the outside, even though he's not the speedster on the outside that's going to just fly down the field, he's got the big enough body and the strong enough hands to be able to go up and fight for a ball. It's just going to be a matter of whether he's only a pass catching tight end. If that's the case, I think we're maybe getting another Bauer. Well, I can't even say that because Bauer Sharp can catch the ball, but another Bauer Sharp type that's just a pass catcher and not a blocker. Ben Arbuckle's offense runs a lot of 2 tight end sets, so we really need to find a tight end. And I'm hoping that in the spring portal, after spring football, that we can actually land another tight end that's going to be able to come in and block so we can get those 2 tight end sets like he's looking at. Otherwise, we may have to be flipping a linebacker to tight end or a linebacker to fullback so somebody can come block or something like that. But moving Ivan Carry-On to tight end really makes some sense in my brain.
Yeah, I mean, on the offensive side, I mean, we've added a couple pieces, much needed pieces, and good pieces to the offensive line. So I'm excited about that. Obviously, we had a huge upgrade at quarterback in getting Mateer. I think we dropped the number 9 ranked quarterback in the portal for the number 1 ranked quarterback in the portal. We've added some wide receivers with some height, with some length. We got an Arkansas wide receiver I'm excited about. We got one out from the West Coast, I believe. And then some of our biggest victories, though, this offseason have been some guys saying they're going to come back. Obviously, Deion Burke's coming back. I'm excited about that. R. Mason Thomas is going to run it back. Very excited about that one. Talent-wise, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling a lot better right now than I was, because I think our defense is going to be fine, and our offense with a coordinator that I believe is going to be – I think that he's just going to have his ducks in a row. Like, is it going to be perfect always? Probably not, but he's going to have a plan. He's going to know what he wants to accomplish. He's going to try and establish an identity for this offense, which we lacked all year long.
Yeah, Kendall Dolby coming back on defense as the cheetah is really big too.
Yeah.
One other thing is the Kendall Daniels, the redshirt junior transfer from Oklahoma State. In high school, he was a safety. Last year at Oklahoma State, his first couple of years at Oklahoma State, he was a safety. Last year at Oklahoma State, they moved him to linebacker, kind of in that cheetah position. I can't remember what they called it, probably the Wheat Master or something. But he will probably be moving back to safety, and will probably also, it sounds like, be the backup cheetah behind Kendall Dolby. With Deshaun McCullough leaving, some of those other guys that left were probably going to fill into that cheetah position, but Kendall Daniels could also be a cheetah. He's kind of an in-between player too. A little bit too big to be a safety, not really big enough to be a linebacker, but he got forced into linebacker duties at Oklahoma State this last year. Portal is going to be good. Dalton, give the overall portal experience, the end-of-year portal experience, a letter grade like you were in middle school again.
Well, I mean, my letter grade, I'm going to say this 2-part, because I think we A+ on the quarterback position. Love what we've done there. Super excited about that. But overall, I would say right now we're in the B range. Some of these guys you just don't know enough about. They haven't played football at the Power 5 level, and it takes a team to do it, and there are some dudes that are playing Division II that transfer up to Division I and they ball out in their position. I'm not saying that these guys aren't going to come be absolute studs, but it's just seeing is believing at this point. I want to know that the group of guys we're putting on the field can play well together. Part of it comes down to as well, I mean, we saw it this year. We had players that, I mean, we said all year long, we're playing backups. We're playing third strings, fourth string dudes. But with the right game plan in place, you can find ways to win games. And so I think we're right in the B range right now, probably the B minus to the B, not necessarily B plus. But I think that if coaching does what it can do, then this team has a chance. But again, I'm taking it as a fan, one game at a time. I really don't have expectations. I'm not sitting here saying this Oklahoma team has the potential to go win a national title, because it's very hard to do that. Shoot, it's going to be hard to make the playoff right now in the SEC. I mean, I'm still not on the bandwagon of our coaching staff is going to be set for the next 3 or 4 years, because we have no idea what's going to happen with that after this year. So there's just a lot of questions in the air for me.
I agree. I'm going to throw out a C plus, B minus, right in that range. So we're not too far off. For it to get up into the B plus range for me, some of these, Kennesaw State, Western Carolina players that we've been getting that you said haven't played big time football yet, they're really going to have to come step up and show us what they got. I mean, we got 2 Kennesaw State players. One of them is a tight end who I'm pretty excited to see. He's a redshirt sophomore. His name's Carson Kent, but he's 6'4", 240. He's a big boy. And he was 3-star coming out of high school, ends up going to Kennesaw State, but his stats at Kennesaw State are crazy. I know that's Kennesaw State. That's like, saying Boise's tight end stats are crazy. He's not playing anybody, so you can't expect his stats to be too great. But I'm gonna land right there in that C plus, B minus area with it. It's just a like you said, it's a seeing is believing thing for me. So if they can show me what they've done is going to have an effect on the field, then that can grow during the season next year. Going into the season, I think I'm going to stay right there in that probably C plus, B minus range and see what happens.
Yeah, and honestly, for the tight end position too, I'm at the sense where I want them to be physical to the point where they're more so a fullback than they are a wide receiver, because that's my issue. If we're going to throw a tight end out there as a wide receiver who's barely blocking and just trying to get not willing to make the block or create that contact or any of that, just put a wide receiver out there. Put a slot receiver out there. You're just taking up space when you throw these tight ends out there who are not fast, who aren't agile, who can't make quick cuts, quick movements, can't make a guy miss. What's the point? This year we saw it. Bauer Sharp was basically a slot receiver for us who couldn't do anything. So if Carry-On's going to move to tight end, they may put him at that position. They're just going to play him as a slot receiver every now and then. They'll ask him to block, and then you and I will be on here upset that he isn't blocking anybody.
Well, I'm hoping that changes with Arbuckle's scheme a little bit, because he is very tight end heavy in his scheme. So I hope that changes with his scheme, and we're not just seeing that. If we are seeing that, 3-4 weeks into the season, then you and I, you're right. We will be on here complaining about that. All right, well, let's move on to our picks. Really just got the 2 games we're picking this week. So I think it's your turn to go first, right? Because I went first last week.
It is my turn.
So it's your turn to go first. I'm just going to let you go at it. Dalton, what's your first pick?
Are we still doing with only 2 games that we can't have the same master lock?
No, I don't think we can really do that, right?
Okay, I was going to say, because with only 2 games, that puts you in a really bad position, because Oklahoma State, sorry, I put OSU on my thing. Ohio State, minus 5.5, is that what it's at right now? It's 5.5?
5.5, yeah.
Yeah, that's my master lock. Ohio State to cover the 5.5 versus Texas. I've not seen enough from Texas to show that And I've seen a lot from Ohio State. They're on a tear right now. I mean, they're blowing out dudes like Oregon, who is the number one team in the country all year. Will Howard's playing great football. Texas can't establish a run game against really good teams right now. So maybe they'll surprise me. Maybe they'll shock me. I don't know. I'm not expecting it. So give me Ohio State minus 5.5 against Texas, and that's going to be my master of the week.
All right, I'm just going to follow your lead on that one. That's definitely my master luck this week. Ohio State is the number one scoring defense in the country. They're barely giving up 12 points a game scoring. They're only giving up 152 yards through the air and 92 rushing yards a game. So they're barely giving up 250. They're not even giving up 250 yards a game to opposing offenses. Texas doesn't have a running game right now. For whatever reason, they have not seemed to be able to run the ball good. If they have to rely on the arm of Quinn Ewers, you can expect 2 or 3 turnovers in that game, I feel like. And I don't think there's any doubt that Will Howard, Quinshaw Junkins, Travion Henderson, all those guys are playing amazing right now. Their defense is playing amazing. They're swarming. They're all over the place. We saw it last week against Oregon. Got to give me Will Howard and Ohio State to cover the 5.5 as my master lock as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, for my next pick, the next game, Penn State and Notre Dame. I believe it's 1.5 right now. I'm going to take Penn State to cover the 1.5. We talked about it earlier. Notre Dame's got to make for me to believe in Notre Dame and give them credit. I got to see them beat. I mean, this is their biggest game of the year. And we talked about how many top 25 teams they played, right? You look now, I'd have to go back and double check because I did a quick look. I'm pretty sure if you look at their schedule now, the only top 25 win they had was Army, not talking about the college football playoffs. So,
you mean the teams that are in the top 25 now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, their top 25 wins are a little skewed because most of those teams did not stay there for too long. This is awkward for me because I don't even feel like they should have been in to start with.
Sure.
But I just have a feeling. I really do. I have a feeling that Notre Dame is going to show up in this game.
Okay.
And if they can somehow slow down Drew Aller and Allen, the running back, who Drew Aller has 3,192 yards, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Their running back has 1,026 yards, 8 touchdowns. They have a receiver with 1,158 yards. They have another receiver that has 900 and something yards receiving. If Notre Dame's defense can play like they did last week against Georgia, play that swarming defense, I think they can slow them down enough to win this game. I can't tell you where I think Notre Dame's points are going to come from is the scary thing, because they are struggling to run the ball, or they're struggling to stop the run, and Penn State doesn't give up any yardage to running teams. I mean, like I said earlier, Penn State's the number 8 team in the country rushing defense, only giving up 100.9 yards a rush. So I think this game may come down to Riley Leonard. You said it to Chief earlier when he tried to use Riley Leonard only having, a couple of games under his belt at Notre Dame when they lost to NIU, whatever. Riley Leonard has a lot of experience at the D1 level in a Power 5 setting. So something just tells me I'm going to take Notre Dame to cover this 1.5 and win this game and go on against the winner of the Ohio State-Texas game in the national championship.
Well, that's our one pick. It's not our master lock. So that will be the difference in our season.
Are we still tied?
I'm up 1. So you've got to win this one to tie it going into the Natty week.
Unless we pick different teams in the Natty.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to points.
Right.
So, all right. Well, good deal. I'm taking Notre Dame to cover the 1.5. We'll see what happens. Chief, I can see you. Nobody else can see you. I can see you. You're still sitting there. But if they lose this game, I'm never picking them as one of my picks again. I'm just telling you that. If they don't cover this spread, I will never pick them again on this podcast. So, guys, it's been fun. Thanks again to Chief for joining us for this episode. Final 4 week coming up Thursday, Friday. Don't miss the games. They're going to be really good games. We'll be back with you next Wednesday night. Dalton, it's always fun. I love this time with you guys. You know what they say, right?
The weekend is good.
But the midweek, it is always better.
And boom goes the dynamite.